Famous people who passed away in 1783. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. William Alexander, Lord Stirling. He was born in December 1725 and he died in January 1783. His age was 57 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was severe gout and rheumatism. He was a Scottish-American Major General during the American Revolutionary War. He was considered male heir to the Scottish title of Earl of Stirling through Scottish lineage, and he sought the title sometime after 1756. John Hanson. He was born in April 1721 and he died in November 1783. His age was 62 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an American founding father, merchant, and politician from Maryland during the Revolutionary era. In 1779, Hanson was elected as a delegate to the Continental Congress. After serving in a variety of roles for the Patriot cause in Maryland, he signed the Articles of the Confederation in 1781. Charles Carroll. He was born in March 1723 and he died in March 1783. His age was 60 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an American statesman from Maryland. He was the builder of Baltimore Colonial home, Mount Clare, and a delegate to the Second Continental Congress in 1776 and 1777. James Otis. He was born in February 1725 and he died in May 1783. His age was 58 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was lightning strike. He was an American lawyer, political activist, colonial legislator, and early supporter of patriotic causes in Massachusetts at the beginning of the Revolutionary era. Otis was an opponent of the rates of assistance imposed by the Great Britain on the American colonies in the early 1760s, which allowed law enforcement officials to search private property without cause. Charles Paulding. He was born in October 1738 and he died in June 1783. His age was 44 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was diving accident. He was an Edinburgh confectioner, an amateur engineer who made improvements to the diving bell. He died while diving to the wreck of the Belgioso in Dublin Bay, using a diving bell of his own design. Anne Eliza Blaker. She was born in October 1752 and she died in November 1783. Her age was 31 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was an American poet and correspondent following a New York upbringing. She married John James Blaker, a lawyer. In 1769, he encouraged her writings and helped her publish a periodical containing her works. Johann Jacob Bodmer. He was born in July 1698 and he died in January 1783. His age was 84 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Swiss author, academic, critic, and poet. He formed a German literary school in opposition to Johann Christoph Gottschalk of Leipzig, with whom he carried a prolonged controversy. William Tansor. He was born in November 1706 and he died in October 1783. His age was 76 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English hymn writer, composer of West Gallery music, and teacher of music. His output includes approximately 100 hymn tunes, psalm settings, and a tedium. His manual, A New Musical Grammar, was still popular in the 19th century. James Nares. He was born in April 1715 and he died in February 1783. His age was 67 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English composer of mostly sacred vocal works, though he also composed for the harpsichord and organ. It is believed that Naturalists was the first person to systematically publish a series of keyboard lessons for students of the piano. Jeanne Quinault. She was born in October 1699 and she died in January 1783. Her age was 83 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a French actress, playwright, and salon hostess. She made her debut at the Comédie Française in 1718 and was accepted into the company in December 1718, becoming the sixth member of the Quinault family to be admitted. Capability Brown. He was born in August 1716 and he died in February 1783. His age was 66 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English gardener and landscape architect, a notable figure in the history of the English landscape garden style. He designed more than 170 parks, many of which survive. He was nicknamed Capability because he would tell his clients that their property had capability for improvement. Francisco Salgueiro. He was born in May 1707 and he died in March 1783. His age was 75 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Spanish sculptor. He is the most representative Spanish image maker of the 18th century and one of the greatest of the Baroque. Francisco worked exclusively on religious themes and almost always in polychromed wood. Benjamin Kennicott. He was born in April 1718 and he died in September 1783. His age was 65 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English theologian and Hebrew scholar. In 1760, he issued proposals for collating all Hebrew manuscripts of date prior to the invention of printing. Subscriptions to the amount of nearly £10,000 were obtained, and many scholars agreed to participate. Marguerite Gordon. She was born in 1730 and she died in September 1783. Her age was 53 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was complications of syphilis. She was a French brothel owner and procurer in 18th century Paris. Her brothel was the most exclusive in Paris during that age, and she was arguably the most famous of her profession. Joseph Leeson, 1st Earl of Milltown. He was born in March 1701 and he died in October 1783. His age was 82 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Irish peer and politician. He was the son of Joseph Leeson, a brewer in Dublin, and Mary Bryce, daughter of Alderman Andrew Bryce, Sheriff of Dublin. Jean Léon de Lambert. He was born in November 1717 and he died in October 1783. His age was 65 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was urinary bladder illness. He was a French mathematician, mechanician, physicist, philosopher, and music theorist. Until 1759, he was together with Denis Diderot, a co-editor of the Encyclopédie. William Hunter. He was born in May 1718 and he died in March 1783. His age was 64 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Scottish anatomist and physician. He was a leading teacher of anatomy and the outstanding obstetrician of his day. His guidance and trainings of his equally famous brother, John Hunter, was also of great importance. James Granville. He was born in February 1715 and he died in September 1783. His age was 68 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an influential member of parliament and political figure during the mid-18th century. He was first elected as a member of parliament in 1741 on the slate of Lord Cobham and served as one of the Cobham's cubs during his early years in parliament. Leonhard Euler. He was born in April 1707 and he died in September 1783. His age was 76 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was brain hemorrhage. He was a Swiss mathematician, physicist, astronomer, geographer, logician, and engineer who founded the studies of graph theory and topology and made pioneering and influential discoveries in many other branches of mathematics, such as analytic number theory, complex analysis, and infinitesimal calculus. Carl Linnaeus the Younger. He was born in January 1741 and he died in November 1783. His age was 42 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was stroke. He was a Swedish naturalist. His names distinguish him from his father, the pioneering taxonomist Carl Linnaeus. Frederick Cornwallis. He was born in March 1713 and he died in March 1783. His age was 70 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a British clergy member who served as Archbishop of Canterbury after a career in the Church of England. He was born the seventh son of an aristocratic family. Anna Rosina de Gasc. She was born in July 1713 and she died in March 1783. Her age was 69 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was an accomplished portrait artist in 18th century Germany. In 1757, Rosina was appointed as court painter by Frederick Augustus. During her 10-year stay at the court, she painted a gallery of 40 ladies. Charles Collet. He was born in April 1709 and he died in November 1783. His age was 74 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was known for his sharp, satirical dramas and chansons in France. He was writing his journal, a curious collection of literary and personal strictures on his companions as well as on their enemies. Nikita Ivanovich Panin. He was born in September 1718 and he died in April 1783. His age was 64 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an influential Russian statesman and political mentor to Catherine the Great for the first 18 years of her reign. In that role, he advocated the Northern Alliance, closer ties with Frederick the Great of Prussia, and the establishment of an advisory Privy Council. Juliane Reichardt. She was born in May 1752 and she died in May 1783. Her age was 30 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was puerperal fever. She was a pianist, singer, and composer from the Kingdom of Prussia. During her lifetime, she published 2 piano sonatas and 30 songs. Ignaz Holzbauer. He was born in September 1711, and he died in April 1783. His age was 71 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Austrian composer of symphonies, concertos, operas, and chamber music, and a member of the Mannheim School. His aesthetic style is in the line with that of Sturm and Drang movement of German art and literature. Benedict Joseph Labat. He was born in March 1748 and he died in April 1783. His age was 35 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was malnutrition and exhaustion. He was a French, Franciscan tertiary, and Catholic saint. He was from a well-to-do family near Arras, France. After attempting a monastic lifestyle, he opted instead of the life of a pilgrim. He traveled to most of the major shrines of Europe, subsisting by begging. He is the patron saint of the homeless. Christian Mayer. He was born in August 1719 and he died in April 1783. His age was 63 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an influential astronomer. He is most noted for pioneering the study of binary stars, although his equipment was ill-suitable for distinguishing between true binaries and coincident star alignments. Adolf Friedrich von Reinhardt. He was born in January 1726 and he died in August 1783. His age was 57 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a German jurist and publicist. He was a pietist and supporter of Christian August Crusius. He became a professor of law at the University of Butzbach in 1770. Thomas Calcraft. He was born in 1738 and he died in 1783. His age was 45 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English politician and lieutenant colonel. He was a member of Parliament from 1761 to 1774. He was elected member of Parliament at the 1761 British general election. Herr Wilhelm Wargentin. He was born in September 1717 and he died in December 1783. His age was 66 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a major figure in 18th century Swedish astronomy, focusing on celestial phenomena. He made studies on the moons of Jupiter and published his first paper on the topic in 1741 in the Acta of the Royal Society of Sciences in Uppsala. Johann Adolf Hess. He was born in March 1699 and he died in December 1783. His age was 84 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an 18th century German composer, singer, and teacher of music. Immensely popular in his time, he was best known for his prolific operatic output, though he also composed a considerable quantity of sacred music. Ahmad bin Said al-Busaidi. He was born in 1694 and he died in December 1783. His age was 89 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was the first ruler of Oman of the Al Said dynasty. He came to power during a period when Oman was divided by civil war, and the Persians had occupied large parts of the country. During his long rule as Imam, the country prospered and regained its leading position in the Persian Gulf. Yoriyuki Arima. He was born in December 1714 and he died in December 1783. His age was 64 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He contributed significantly to traditional Japanese mathematics. He was a Japanese mathematician of the Edo period. He approximated the value of pi and its square. In 1766, he founded the following rational approximation of pi, correct to 29 digits. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.